Alright, so we are recording. This is going to be a little lesson for learning how to do graphs. So let's go down, guys, to our 6th slide here. Data and graph, it says, and it says title, row 1, 2, 3. This is basically just a graph that I threw in there and put a couple data in, and we're seeing a couple bars for the data that I put in. What we want to do is get in there and edit the data. So go ahead and touch right on the graph, and it pulls up a few options up top there. What we want is to edit data. So that'll get us into this handy dandy chart here. We're going to be changing some things in here, and this is where you're going to be putting your data for your flights that you measured with your group. So the first thing we want to do is change a couple things so that this chart actually makes sense moving forward. So right now, all I set up was basic rows and columns. So we have 3 rows, 3 columns, which would be for 3 people doing 3 flights each. So let's first of all change these row names. These are going to be the names of you guys. So row 1 can be your name, essentially. We'll just say I'm Bob today. I'm changing this to Bob. But you can put your name and then your 2 group member names, or if you're a group of 4, it's very easy to just go ahead and add a 4th row in if you need it. So for my demonstration, I'm going to do Bob, Ted, and Jill.
Can you change the color?
We'll get to that later. Now I'm just going to cover the basics. So we got Bob, Ted, and Jill. Column 1, 2, and 3, we are also going to change the names of. We're going to call them Flight 1, Flight 2. You see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
Flight 98. No, 3. Flight 3. Testing you guys. You passed. Flight 1, 2, and 3. I've got Bob, Ted, and Jill. You should have your name and your partner's names.
What if you don't know your partner's name?
I hope you can figure that out later in the day when you get in your group, or that would be a little embarrassing. So right now I've got some random numbers in for Bob. Let's say his first flight was 25, so I have that right here. His second flight was 35, and his third flight was 50. Anytime you want to check back to your graph, you can click Done here on the Edit Chart Data. Go ahead and touch that, and you can check in on your graph. So what we see so far is we've basically made a key up at the top left here where it says Bob, Ted, and Jill now. And why we don't see Ted and Jill yet down in our graph is because we haven't put in any data for them. Can we save questions for just a second? So what we want to do is get back in and edit data. And we'll just put in some imaginary numbers for now, just to kind of practice to do this. So I'm going to do like 30, 40, 50. Just put in some random numbers. I wouldn't recommend putting in anything above, say, 100. Because if you did, it would really kind of skew your graph. You'd have one really huge bar, and then the rest of them would be teeny, teeny, tiny. So kind of keep it in the same ballpark, just to practice. Get some data in, click Done, and kind of see how that works. Oh, I did everyone 50 for Flight 3, I guess. A couple things you can play around with. This icon in the middle that looks like a globe, it has arrows up and to the right. You can kind of touch that and move it around. It's a 3D graph. Wow. So you can move it around. Make it how you want to look, but if you really get it funky looking like this, it's hard for me to read your graph. So it's a neat feature, but make sure that your graph is still readable and that I can tell what is what. Other things you can toy around with. You can select the graph like I've done already so that you got the blue square around it. Go up to the paintbrush way up at the top. Paintbrush gives you some options to kind of toy around with the colors of the graph. You can change those around just by touching them.
How'd you do that?
I just told you. Other things you can try are in this chart options down at the bottom here. Things not to do is turn off chart title. We do want a chart title. I do want a legend, so don't monkey around with those. What you can change if you want to is the font. You can change that to anything you would like, as long as it's, again, readable. You can make the text bigger or smaller. Keyword is I need to be able to read it. It needs to be readable. You can change the depth with this slider here just to make it look more 3D or less 3D. And again, it can look really cool, but if you make it look all crazy like this, I can't tell what your data is. So just make sure you can have fun with it, but it still needs to be able to be read. Readable. Anytime you make some changes that you don't like, remember your good friend undo up at the top left there. So I'm going to kind of undo my way out of what I've done here so that I can teach this again with another class. But you can kind of practice as well, undoing things, getting back where you started. I'm going to make Bob, Ted, and Jill disappear, and I'm back where I started. One other thing you'll want to change is the title of that graph. See where it says title right here. To get in there, you just double tap on where it says title, and it's a basic text box that now you are able to change the title of. Let me stop my recording.